Hour 7 o'clock almost upon us. We are ready to, I'd like to call the regular meeting for the Village of Tinley Park Plan Commission to order. So please everybody stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Secretary, please take the roll call.
Stanton. Engel. Manny.
Here.
Gatto. Fielder.
Here.
Gaskell.
Here.
Aitchison.
Here.
Vic.
Here.
Gray.
Okay, according to the roll, a quorum is present. Staff, are there any communications at this time?
No.
So, all right, since there are no staff comments, I'd like to have a motion to approve the minutes from the August 15th, 2019 meeting.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Vic, seconded by Gaskell. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it. Motion passes. We'll move on to the first item on the agenda this evening. It's a workshop and public meeting to discuss site plan approval, plat of REIT subdivision, and a plat of abrogation for the Union Square North Townhome properties located at 6822 179th Street and 17884- through 17890 Oak Park Avenue. Staff, please make your presentation on this item.
Yes, thank you. This is a minor change to a project that was brought before the village back in 2017, and you probably have noticed the construction of the southern portion of Union Square on 179th and Oak Park Avenue. The eventual plan has 4 structures in total for it. There you have a picture of the proposal, and wonderfully, the picture of the constructed structure looks very much like it was supposed to look like eventually. As I mentioned, there are 4 structures on the total project. They've completed the southern half. And as often the time as they're getting to know the market, they found that the 3-bedroom units are selling much faster than their 2-bedroom units. So they came back to see if they could make some slight adjustments. The property's tight. There's not a lot that can be done. The total number of units remains the same, but they're changing up the mix of units so that they could have more 3-bedroom and less 2-bedroom. Because of that, there were some slight modifications to the plat of subdivision, as well as an easement up on the north side of the property, just north of Building B. There was a public utility easement there that had to be reduced from 5 feet to 3 feet, so we needed to have a plat of abrogation. All that means is a vacation of a portion of the easement. Our engineers have looked at that and made sure that it can still accommodate all the public utilities that need to go through there. So engineering really wasn't a big issue. The other issue is shown in the picture here. There's a very large utility pole that would be right in front of some of the units there in Building A. And they'd like to give a little bit more space so that it's not right smack dab right out of the front door. So they've increased that setback from 5 feet to 10 feet. There's a table in your packet that lists all the different changes. None of them result in a variance, and none of them complicate the engineering that was approved for the project. Landscaping was also minorly impacted, and the number count remained the same. So what's important for you to consider this evening is the site plan, which again makes minor adjustments to the width and location of some of those 2 buildings on the north side of 179th. And then again, some minor changes to the plat of subdivision. That would be your second approval. And your last approval or motion would be regarding the plat of abrogation. We are still going back and forth on some very minor engineering issues. I know that we've had a second round of reviews, some minor language changes on the plat. So I'm requesting, and as it's worded here, that you condition any of your approvals on final engineering approval. Site plan approvals are yours. The plat of subdivision and plat of abrogation will be recommended to the village board. Any questions?
Is the petitioner here this evening?
Yes,
Uh,
we have the engineer and the owner,
Would
Kevin
it-
Halloran.
Would either of you like to make a presentation or discuss the project, or? Paula did a great job, so.
Yeah, she summarized it all, as she said, I mean, it's very consistent with what we were originally planning to do, just wanted to make some small changes to it so we can wrap up the project here.
Any questions from the commissioners here? Seeing none, I request motions for approval from the Plan Commission.
On number one,
Yep.
I'll make a motion. Make a motion to grant petitioners Kevin Halloran and Mike Halloran, the property owners, site plan approval for the proposed property located 6822 through 6830, 179th Street, and 17884 through 17890 Oak Park Avenue in the neighborhood general zoning district consistent with the submitted plans and conditioned upon final engineering approval.
We have a motion by Commissioner Gaskell. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Vick. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Unanimous roll call. Can I get a motion for the second?
I'd like to make a motion to recommend the village board grant the petitioners Kevin Halloran and Mike Halloran, owners, approval of the plat of re-subdivision for Union Square North located at 6822 to 6830 179th Street and 17884 to 17890 Oak Park Avenue in the neighborhood general zoning district, conditioned upon final engineering approval.
Second.
The motion's been made and seconded. I think I need a roll call on this one since it goes to the board for recommendation. Want to take the roll?
Manny,
Yes.
Gaskell,
Yes.
Vic,
Yes.
Aitchison,
Yes.
Fielder,
Yes. With unanimous approval, that will be recommended to the full board. Can I get a motion for number 3?
Make a motion to recommend the village board grant the petitioners Kevin Halloran and Mike Halloran, owners, approval of the plat of abrogation of the public utility and drainage easement for Union Square North located at 6822 through 6830 179th Street and 17884 through 17890 Oak Park Avenue, conditioned upon final engineering approval.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Again, since it's going to be recommended for the board, Secretary, please take the roll.
Manny,
Yes.
Fielder,
Yes?
Gaskell,
Yes.
Aitchison,
Yes.
Vic.
Yes.
Unanimous vote. It will now be approved to go, all the motions for plat and approvals will be, have been approved or going before the board for approval at their October 1 meeting. That concludes the first item of business. We'll now go to the second item of business. The second item of the agenda this evening is a workshop and public hearing for site plan approval and special use permit for a substantial deviation from the North Creek Business Park planned unit development for a new Holiday Inn hotel on the property located at 18320 North Creek Drive. Staff, can you please make your presentation on this workshop at this time?
Sure, yeah, so we're gonna do the workshop and the public hearing today because the last meeting being canceled. So we'll kind of go through everything here in the workshop portion, and then if you guys can discuss if there's any changes or any issues you guys have with what they'll be requesting, we can roll that into the public hearing portion. Just due to there's not too many open items, so we kind of thought whatever there is open, we can kind of do via conditions. So this, as you said, is a site plan approval and then special use permit for the substantial deviation. This is located in the North Creek Business Park planned unit development. This is a Holiday Inn hotel they're proposing, 63,471 square feet. It'll be 4 stories and then located on a 2.47 acre lot in that North Creek Business Park. The hotel is planned to have 108 rooms, indoor pool, fitness room, meeting room, outdoor patio, and then a dining area and a hotel lounge that'll have a bar in it. The property is currently vacant. Again, it's zoned ORI, office and restricted industrial, and then in that North Creek Business Park planned unit development. Fairly unique development for an ORI. It incorporates a lot of kind of B3 business type uses in there. It's a lot more office kind of oriented and less industrial oriented in there. And then there's a number of hotels that are located in it as well, such as Comfort Inn, Sleep Inn, Wingate, La Quinta's over there as well. So it's kind of get that mixture of the different business and ORI kind of office and industrial uses. That PUD was originally approved in 1991 as just a base ORI zoning, and then in 1995 they came back and converted part of it to have kind of a B3 base zoning, and that's more to the east where there's Buffalo Wild Wings, Wendy's, Speedway, closer to Harlem Avenue where there was a little more interest in kind of your typical business uses and not as much on the office and industrial side. So this parcel's still in that ORI zoning. The PUD does allow for hotels as a permitted use and doesn't necessarily call out any specific lot area that our zoning code typically does. So our zoning code's got a 5-acre minimum for hotels in the B3 zoning, and we believe that was also supposed to be carried into the ORI, but might have been a Scribner's error. I guess regardless, on this project though, it is a permitted use in that PUD, so that kind of overrides those zoning code requirements, or it kind of supersedes them. The unique to this property, we don't get too many in the projects in this, but it's in the urban design overlay district. That's kind of a overlay district that promotes a lot more kind of walkability, push the buildings towards the street, parking lots and back, sidewalks and connectivity between sites. It's great in concept. Sometimes it's really hard to implement those, especially on kind of infill lots like this one. So, and especially with something like a hotel that has a large parking need. So we've kind of worked through this project with staff and the development team for the Holiday Inn to try and understanding that maybe every piece of that code can't be met, but really trying to meet the spirit of that in terms of, you know, how can we get it as close to the street as possible? What type of walkability can we work with? And things of that nature, just to meet the spirit of what that urban design overlay district is. And again, the PUD does allow a hotel, and that doesn't include that 5-acre lot minimum. The use, again, 63,471 square foot hotel, kind of all your typical full-service hotel amenities, and kind of as a note to a lot of people will be like, well, there's already a Holiday Inn, you know, a block away. When new owners purchase that hotel, they also they have a contract to manage the convention center. So their intent from when they bought it was to kind of flip the brand to something that's maybe a little more associated with the convention center. So this is Holiday Inn since that brand's likely to change in the next year or two, they don't know which one it'll be, but this is Holiday Inn trying to ensure that their brand kind of sticks around here. A lot of people are brand oriented when it comes to hotels, so this is them sticking with Finley Park and staying nearby where their current location is. So in anticipation of that name change. Here's the architectural rendering of what they're proposing to do. It's a little difficult to see on this one, but I think there were some bigger renderings in your guys' packets that might have been a little easier to see. Brick and stone, and then a fiber cement board that's kind of got a wood grain type feel to it. Yeah, if you want to.
Because they can't see them.
Yeah. So because this is in a PUD, it's a little unique that there's basically exceptions to the zoning code. So instead of a kind of standard variation, they're considered exceptions. They don't have to meet your kind of typical standards for a variation, and you look at them more in kind of context with the overall PUD. So Paul will pass around the materials. So there's a number of exceptions to that urban design overlay district. Specifically, there's 4. One's the increased front yard setback. Typically, that's, I believe, supposed to be less than 10 feet, but that's a little difficult with a hotel where they're trying to get a canopy and a drop-off. It also doesn't allow for parking in the front yard, limits 1 curb cut per site, and then also requires cross-access to other properties. So they're requesting those exceptions. The curb cut is kind of in tandem with that cross-access. We tried to get cross-access, but essentially with the north property developed with the Hamada Hibachi and Sushi Restaurant and Steakhouse there, and then to the south is the Comfort Inn, I believe. Yeah, the Comfort Inn there, there was no kind of built-in cross-access with those 2 sites, so we were kind of stuck here since you can't really force those properties to now do cross-access. And without that cross-access, it's hard to do 1 curb cut, because you gotta have proper site circulation. Trucks need to be able to make those turns, so, they did 2 curb cuts, but they did align one with an existing street that kind of helps, make some natural kind of cross points there that, allow for the right circulation in and egress and ingress out of the property. Besides those exceptions, there's deviations from the existing PUD requirements. Those include the maximum number of wall signs, the maximum sign face area for wall signs, and then also allowing parking in the front and side yards. So the PUD requirements for that PUD have a maximum wall signs of 2, a sign face area that's essentially a 1 square foot of signage for 1 linear foot of frontage for each side, and then limiting parking in the front and side yards in that PUD. The PUD was designed a little before the urban design overlay district, so again, there's kind of a unique character and nature to that PUD development, to the North Creek area, that I think the exceptions still were met to the greatest extent possible. They did originally have the building pushed all the way back to the west, so we were able to bring it up a little bit. And this kind of helped. It still allowed for trucks to be able to circulate and cars to be able to circulate, allow them to have their kind of front entrance that they want and their drop-off canopy, and then still have some parking up there for, accessible parking, and kind of you're dropping some stuff off, you can do an easy in and out. And then they push some parking on the sides and in the back. So if you push the building up any further, then you kind of lose a row of parking, and it doesn't quite meet the parking requirements. So we tried to play with it as much as possible, and I think this is kind of, the best solution we kind of came up with that kind of meets that intent of bringing that hotel towards the street. So it also kind of matches what a lot of the rest of the PUD was developed. Not all of them go all the way up to the street, but a lot of them, have a row of parking or something like that in the front. So try and bring it as close as possible, but there's some kind of limitations to the design, especially on a hotel. The wall sign requests are, for the number of wall signs, are kind of similar to Woodspring Suites and Wingate Hotels have been granted kind of similar requests to have 4 wall signs. The size requests haven't, I believe Woodspring Suites had a minor one on one of their signs and for their ground sign, but not quite, not for all 4 of their signs like this request. But there is some requests in that PUD that have come forward. But again, it was primarily for the number of wall signs, not necessarily the size, just a minor one for Woodspring. And Wood Spring Suites, which was kind of the newest hotel out there, had, again, that similar front yard parking setback request as well from the PUD. We also think kind of with the landscape screening and the walkways they proposed on the site, that we're confident, again, this kind of meets what that PUD has been developed for. Most of it's developed. There's maybe 4 other parcels that are out there that are undeveloped, but the majority, kind of 90% of that PUD has been developed right now, so. So the first open item that we had on this was just kind of discussing the substantial deviation and what those exceptions are. Predominantly kind of the wall signs being the one that I think could have some scrutiny that maybe they could meet those. I think the exceptions from at least from a staff perspective, the urban design overlay district, those exceptions, we think they've tried to meet those intent, to kind of the best of their ability. From a proposed site plan and circulation perspective, there's that hotel building, then there's parking surrounding the building. There's a number of walkways through and around the building and through the site. There's an existing walkway that goes around the North Creek Pond that's out there, as well as connects over to North Creek Drive. So that exists on the site right now. So it's on the parcel with an easement. It's owned and maintained by the POA. So some of those walkways need some improvement. So the petitioner and the owner is working with the POA to kind of improve those. Maybe update them, repave them when they're doing this project, because they're not in the best of shape right now. But they will be upgrading those and then connecting their site to those walkways. The site or North Creek, I guess, PUD in general is lacking sidewalks through that, and then a lot of 183rd in that general area is not, there's not much walkability or connectivity out there to this site. So we kind of went back and forth as you got to start somewhere with sidewalks. So with this project, we kind of left it, we think it'd be best to kind of do a cash in lieu in this situation. They'll basically submit the amount of the cost for that sidewalk to the village to use for sidewalk connectivity in the area, but not actually install the sidewalk. But they have planned for where the sidewalk would go, the width, the location, so there is a clear path through there where the sidewalk could be installed in the future. I guess the point is just not, if the sidewalk's installed out there, it'll start getting some age on it, but yet it doesn't connect to anything. So we think, as planners, I think we were a little surprised that this area never really planned from the very beginning to have sidewalks, especially with all the hotels there. It seems like, you stay at this hotel and walk over to Buffalo Wild Wings or Speedway and get whatever you needed, but you're pretty much walking through drive aisles through most of it over there. So we think there's some need for that walkability out there, but it's not there right now. So we've recommended, again, that cash in lieu option instead of installing it. If the petitioner wishes, they can install the sidewalk there, but I just want to connect to anything right now. So the village engineer kind of estimated a cost of $24,000 for the sidewalk, the excavation, the sidewalk construction, and then the restoration with SOT for the parkway. So they could basically pay that cash in lieu or install the sidewalk on the property if they wish. And we're recommending that's a condition of approval on this project. Parking wise, there's our zoning code requires 1 space per room, and then basically 1 space for the maximum number of employees that would ever be there at one time. So they have 108 rooms, and then they've anticipated 6 employees would be there at a maximum at any one time. and that would give a total requirement of 114 parking spaces needed out there. They proposed 115, so they have one extra. 110 regular, 5 ADA spaces. Hotels are kind of a unique breed when it kind of comes to parking because they're rarely at full capacity. I don't think they're pro forma, their financing really isn't based on them doing that, but they do fill up during certain big events. You know, we have the amphitheater, we have the convention center, so they do during certain special events fill up, so you do need that parking, but I think on a day-to-day basis, the parking basically works out there. It meets their full capacity, but they didn't want to overpark the site either, so there's one extra space, and I think meeting that code requirement, they meet it, don't go over it too much, so I think that's a good thing. Also, from the urban design overlay perspective is cut down on the size and the amount of parking if you can, and not kind of overpark sites. From the landscaping perspective, what they've designed out here, the proposed landscape plan was reviewed by our landscape architects. He found it mostly in conformance with our landscape ordinance. There's a few exceptions to that that they're requesting waivers for. The primary one's the north buffer yard where the walkway connects out to North Creek Drive right now. So typically there's a number of plantings and that need to be in there, and it's got to be 10 feet in width. However, with that walkway there, it kind of cuts down their ability to fit all those plantings in there and then also get that full buffer width because the walkway's there. So they would actually have to make that 15 feet if they wanted to get the full 10-foot landscape buffer and actually be able to fit in the amount of landscaping they needed. They did beef it up quite a bit, but from a staff and our landscape architect kind of thought they did beef it up in terms of the number, the size, and the quality, but we didn't really want to completely wall in that walkway either that runs there. So we think they did a pretty good job designing the landscaping there that still allows you to see the walkway and not feel like you're secluded, but buffered enough that I think it'll be probably one of the best landscape lots out there in this PUD. And then besides that is the parking lot landscaping where we have interior parking lot islands that typically cover this, the percentage of landscaping, which is 15% of the parking lot. So they have a deficit on that, primarily because if they put in more landscape islands, they go under their minimum parking requirements. Also, if you usually get multiple rows of parking, you can kind of put in the strips of landscaping in there that's looking for, but they've also kind of, again, beefed up the diameter of the trees on the exterior and the amount of kind of understory landscaping and shrubs. They've kind of beefed those up around the building as well as around the perimeter to kind of help offset some of that landscaping they're losing in the parking lot. So from an outside perspective looking in there, it'll look great. There just won't be quite as much as we normally get within the parking lot itself, so. Architecture-wise, so the architecture is kind of, they have a prototypical kind of Holiday Inn design that they use for all of these, so it's kind of going off that as a template. Staff's recommendation was kind of to bring in some newer elements or higher end materials. Not traditionally used in a Holiday Inn building, so kind of the original proposal maximized the amount of brick on this, but when you kind of took a full look at it, it looked a lot very institutional, especially on the sides and the back. Looked a little bit like a hospital, I think is what we came up with. So I kind of revamped it a little bit, used some different materials, bring some contrast and make it a little more inviting, I think, than what, meeting our brick requirement to a T. And just using brick and not having any other design, I think they designed it to be a little more attractive. It still meets our brick requirement though, so it still meets our masonry requirement, so they were able to actually get a better design and not have to request the masonry waiver, so. It's 65% face brick, there's 15% stone that's primarily around the base, and then there's a vertical element on the left of this, or it'll be on the south side of the front elevation. 16.7% fiber cement siding, which kind of has a wood tone to it, which will be that main area, kind of right by the entrance. And then there's 2.8% ephes, which is just primarily the decorative elements and then the roof elements. So they just kind of use that as an architectural standpoint. They don't plan on using kind of any green uplighting that you kind of typically see with these. Not that that is necessarily a code requirement, but with a lot of Holiday Inns, you tend to get like a green uplighting with it as well. But they are not anticipating using that this time. And in terms of signage, so they have one ground sign that's proposed on the site that would meet our height and our size requirements. The only kind of open item and an issue with that is that our sign code basically requires that it's a true kind of monument sign and that there's not any type of a pole or a pylon sign style to it. So they're trying to get more of a substantial base and frame to it. And the code requires that the base at a minimum be the width of the sign face. So they would need to widen the base out a little bit from what they proposed. I can leave it up to them to let you know if they're open to that or not. And for the wall signs, there's a little difference in terms of what is allowed by the PUD and allowed by our zoning code, and then what they're proposing. I think I have a typo in my staff report too. So it's 145.1 square feet, I believe, for the main kind of largest signs there. And those would typically be capped at, 125. Is what they're proposing for the large wall signs. Those are typically capped at 120 square feet. So for kind of their two largest signs that'll be on the front and the back of the building that they're proposing, those are 5 square feet over. The side wall signs would be allowed to be 62 square feet, and they are proposed at, for 62, and then one of the other sides is a little bit smaller, and that's 57.33 square feet. And they're proposing 76 square foot wall signs on the two sides. So they're about 14 feet and then about 19 feet on the other one that they're over on those two wall signs. We get this a lot, that they kind of make these on kind of prototypical sizes. It happens a lot with hotels and gas stations that kind of have that corporate logo or look to them. I kind of get it. They have them set that way, but it is still a sign. It's an image that they're really translating into the sign. So they should have the ability, if you guys want them to bring that into conformance and not request the waiver, that they would be able to get those signs. It's like taking an image and dragging the corner until you can get it to kind of meet those square footages. So otherwise, they're fairly minor, but we think we can get those into conformance, kind of similar to the rest of the hotels that are out there. And then besides that is, again, the number of wall signs. So there's 4 wall signs they have proposed. They're allowed a maximum of 2. Wingate was allowed 4, but I think they only have 3 installed. And then Woodspring Suites was allowed 4. The rest of the hotels out there, La Quinta, Comfort Inn, they all meet the maximum 2 sign requirements. So one of our other open items is just discussing, again, those sign sizes. Lighting, they provided us a photometric plan. They have 23 lights kind of around the site. There's no spillage at the edges of the property that kind of go over our new requirements. So they've met kind of all our new lighting requirements in terms of the lighting capacity. All the lighting fixtures are downcast, full cutoff, so you can't see the lights, or the light bulbs and get any glare off site. That was adopted, I believe, on Tuesday, was the lighting ordinance, so we had them kind of meeting that from the beginning, but that just got adopted on Tuesday, so they'll be in full compliance with the new lighting ordinance. The only kind of question that we had brought up to them and that maybe they wanted to consider was adding maybe some pedestrian lighting around the existing walkways that are out there for the path. We think that'll kind of help brighten it up and maybe make it a little more usable. It would, however, be the only part of the path that would have lighting on it. So we've kind of left that open up for discussion. If you guys think maybe lighting would make sense along the path that goes around the pond out there. So, I think that's it for the open items that we have. And, so I can maybe leave it up to the petitioner if they have anything or any questions now, I can answer that.
Does anybody have questions for staff at this time? Seeing none, if the petitioner wants to come make a presentation, you're welcome to do so. Technology saying that Dan did a great job as well. So, with no discussion, no presentation, no further questions, I think at this time, make a motion to open this as a public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Aitchison, seconded by Gaskell. Is there anybody in the audience that wishes to make public comments on this project? Seeing none, that means there's no swearing in going on for testimony today, though I do want to mention I do have confirmation of the public notices being completed. They will be put on record. Doesn't seem like there's anything further. Everybody's nodding their head that.
Yeah, if you guys want to maybe discuss what the direction is, at least about the signage, the lighting, or any of the other open items, and then maybe if you guys have some direction or want them to change it.
Why don't you
see-
go one by one? I think you've had a lot you covered.
Sure.
So
Yeah,
you've got this.
just kind of
Open
run through
items.
them.
Let's go through them one. Yeah, you've got 7 open items that we'll kind of go one through 7, one at a time. So.
So one, I guess we can skip that one. That's the general substantial deviation, but I guess I can leave it open if you guys have any issues with the exceptions for the setback, the front yard parking, the curb cut, or the cross access to adjacent properties. I'm not sure if you guys have any opinions on that.
No.
I'd say
Or would
none.
like to see any corrections.
So. Next one.
Moving on. Yeah, just, so general site plan layout, if you guys have any comments on that, since you're approving the site plan. They just kind of left that as an open item since it's not a, clear-cut standards, if there's anything you guys see. It's a fairly tight site, so they fit a
I
pretty
was
big
gonna say,
building and a lot of parking.
It seems like in terms of that particular property, that is, in order to meet the criteria of the development, I mean, there's no way to do, especially the parking, there's no way to,
No, I think Dan did a good job in negotiating, bringing some of that parking in the rear, so it's
Yeah.
not dominating the field.
Anything else that you try and fit in there either means reduction in the building, which usually isn't economical. They're usually trying to get to a certain number of rooms and certain amenities that they have in these hotels, and they kind of have this standard layout, so.
I think what helps this site is having that one cut across from, was it Maple Creek Drive there, lined up with that pretty much. I mean, that definitely eases this a little bit better and makes it a little bit better for things.
Yeah, that was one of the changes they made. That was one of our first comments, was to align that with that, so you don't, you're trying to avoid the offsets with other curb cuts and other roads, so, yeah, it aligns those up, so 2 cars are stopped, they see each other instead of having some weird
Yeah.
angles.
The one to the
And-
north is a little much, but there's not much you can do over there. I mean, and you gotta have a cut there. You gotta have a second cut for this, so, I
Yeah.
mean, one just won't do it, so.
Yeah, I had them look at it. I think they did a good job trying to, it just, when
It's
you're
not gonna
talking
get any
about
closer.
circulation on a site like this, it doesn't quite work
Yeah,
out.
no, not at all.
Okay, so. Yeah, so the landscape plan, they had a couple minor waivers on that. Again, just that north buffer yard, which includes a walkway, so it kind of functions as a buffer, even though there's not landscaping in it. It's a good amenity to kind of have that walkway, and then the parking lot landscaping, which they could theoretically add one more landscape island if you wanted, and they'd still meet the parking requirements. But besides that, they'd start losing.
How long has that walking path been there? Do we know? Has it been like some from the beginning, kind of, or?
It's somewhere near the beginning.
Near the
When-
beginning?
I think once they finished the pond and kind of, because it was all pretty well set up, each
Yeah.
one of those parcels, and that PUD was pretty well laid out. So maybe not in 1991, but soon after there. It's in fairly rough shape, so.
Oh,
Not
yeah.
heavily used.
But yeah, that's the other part of it, is I don't really know how well it's used. Maybe some of the workers out there use it to, since there are no sidewalks, it's kind of the main way through that, to get from one side of the PUD to the other without walking down the street, so.
Oh, hold on, sir, did you want to make a comment?
Can I address, when we're talking about landscaping, can I address a couple of the items there?
Sure. Dan, do I need to swear him in since we're in public hearing, or?
Yes.
Sir, don't mind, it's like, hold up your hand, I gotta swear you in. Do you swear to affirm that the evidence that you are about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, thank you very much. Please proceed.
Yes, my name is Warren Opperman from Joseph Shooter and Associates. Just so we can kind of talk about the landscaping a little bit, as Dan mentioned, and on page 6, with the parking lot landscaping being quite a big variation there, and he did mention in his report, in order to offset that, you'll see on the site plan, especially in the front, a little bit more so in the back, the landscaping was really beefed up to compensate for that deficit in the parking lot landscaping. And then the other thing he mentioned, and it is kind of a biggie, the tree caliper, the code requires 1.5 inches, and these will be 3-inch diameter trees, which are very substantial. So even though you look at the bottom of page 6, and you look at that deficit, which kind of pops out there, we've tried to compensate that quite a bit with the number of plantings around the building itself, and then those tree caliper sizes. So I just want to point that out.
Appreciate it. Thank
And I
you.
think it's a little different too when you're talking large parking fields compared to, these are each 2 rows of parking, and it's surrounded basically by the landscaping on the outside. So if this was like a shopping center, I think that's when that interior parking really starts to matter, so you don't get large expanses of asphalt. I think with the landscaping around the foundation of the building and the outside, and then everything they did to kind of beef it up, I think really does a good job taking care of that. Any comments on that, or do you want me to? You guys are okay, I can move on?
Landscape's good.
Okay. So I guess just the proposed architectural and materials in general, what they're proposing on the building. We had a little bit of discussion, maybe the gray brick could maybe be a little darker to bring a little more contrast between the two, but I think besides, I don't know if we have a specific opinion either way, but, or if you guys do, but, do you have any comments?
I would just
on
like to make the
architecture?
comment that I think this latest proposal for the colors and stuff of it looks a lot better than the original. It definitely, you're absolutely right that the first one did look very institutional in nature and just kinda there, This really, I think, looks a lot better.
And that
definitely
front
looks nice.
elevation was the best one of them,
Yeah.
so, because the back, it did get really flat and when, and that, we've talked a little bit about it with our masonry requirements, how brick's great, it's a good material, but if you put just large expanses of it without any other design guidelines, sometime, this was kind of the example we were saying that when we first saw this, we were like, well, it meets our code, but it doesn't necessarily look very, very inviting, so. I think their architect did a really good job. I think he took some hints from, they kind of have a future architecture, design coming up, so he took a lot of elements from that and plugged it into this, so. Yeah, it's a little more, they're going more contemporary, so I think we're kind of getting a pretty unique holiday in here that'll.
And I want to make a comment. This one's relatively it's the newest of all the prototypes that Holiday Inn has come up with. So, yeah.
Oh, any more comments on that?
Nothing, good.
Then, yeah, do you have anything on the building material colors of the bricks? We were thinking about maybe a little more contrast, but we can maybe leave that up to them if they feel like that's
Yeah, I
necessary.
think the contrast looks good as it
Yeah.
currently
Okay.
sits, so.
The wall sign sizes, I guess, is the next one and kind of the next two, the other ones, the number of wall signs, the wall sign sizes, and then the ground sign are kind of the next items. So those were kind of the ones that I think we could see them maybe correct and meet the code, and kind of want to get your feedback on that.
I'd like to get some feedback on that, because again, I'm not sure why it's gonna be necessary to have 4 signs versus what our code says 2, as, again, most people these days are, if they're traveling, they've already booked the hotel, so they've got a GPS that's finding the hotel. I don't know if they need the 4 signs all the way around the hotel, because people are gonna find it no matter what. So I'd like to hear some feedback if they're acceptable to just scale that back down to at least 2 signs instead of the 4.
If he could swear you in, maybe if he could swear you in really quick. Maybe address.
Please raise your right hand.
I'm sorry?
Say, please raise your right hand so I can swear you in real quick. Do you affirm and swear that the evidence that you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
So, please go ahead. Thank you.
So, the requirement is for the 4 signs, is basically essentially covering probably, it's going to be 4 feet and it's a little, so what I understand is this is, the front of it is going to face the east, which is going to face the Harlem, so it makes sense for us to have a sign on the front.
Yep.
And the side, which is going to be facing more on the northern side, that faces more towards the 183rd, so it's completely overlooking the Hampa. And I'm not too sure, but there's a lot of development that's happening or that's proposed in the northern side of the 183rd and probably something towards the Cook County area. So if something that attracts with all the new developments coming, and hopefully, a few years down the road, there's 183rd develops more further down. So it would makes more sense to have something on the west side as well. I totally get it. The third side
Your
might be
your monument sign will be out
in the front.
in the front.
Yeah, we talked.
Okay, it's gonna be on
North
north,
Creek.
okay, it's not gonna
Yeah.
be, okay. I was thinking it might be on the, okay.
I hope that answers. I mean, we were more thoughtful towards what's coming in the future down the road, and what can bring.
But
And
you really
I
don't need one on
totally-
but you really don't need one on the south side. I mean, you're not gonna see it from the highway. You're just gonna, that side really just looks at other businesses and
The south
hotels.
side, I
And
don't know how far, if the visibility goes through the highway again.
No, you'd never see it.
No, you'd
Blocked.
never,
We'd
it's
never see
blocked.
this
You'd
one,
never
no,
see it
right?
from the highway.
It's the wing gate that gets seen from the highway, which,
Wood Springs probably.
Wood
Springs
Springs probably is from the
That's
highway, yeah.
biggest one. The rest of them are pretty.
Yeah.
It's right
but
next to
you'd
the highway.
Yeah,
Have to be
so-
turning your head.
So northeast and west is more of an interior projections, but highway, I don't think so, yeah.
So, I think you can
And
save
again,
yourself
you
at least one sign.
know, I do understand that, you know, nowadays hotels are not a location, it is a destination. So everybody keys into the Google and it takes you over there.
Between that or if you've got the highway sign right off there that says you've got a Holiday Inn at this exit, so I mean,
Correct, yeah.
They can-
The IDOT.
finding you is not gonna be difficult, let's just put it that way.
Okay.
No. But you can at least, I think, at least save yourself one sign, so.
Yeah, if it's an agreement, we can make it a condition to have them go down to
To three
three
signs.
signs.
I think
and
that
then
might be,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I
I
agree.
think
If
we
they,
can do
if
that.
they wanna figure out which one, and that's really what the Wingate has out. I think Wood Spring was viewed a little differently because it had immediate I-80 frontage.
Yeah, it's right next to it.
And it, so each side was visible from a different street or the expressway. So I think that was viewed a little bit differently because they had direct frontage there. So we can add that as a condition of
That's, yeah,
the
I think we should.
agreement.
I would like to also add, however, that on the sign sizes, the Holiday Inn has their standard size sign. Now, granted, you know, I suppose it could be slightly changed, but their sizes are, that is their manufacturing process. So as far as the square foot of the sign, the one wall sign, excuse me, is 125 square feet rather than 120. The two smaller size signs, and one would go away, which would be the one to the south, so that would go away. The one to the north would be the smaller, most likely, and that would go, probably be the 76 square foot rather than the, what is the code?
It would be whatever the front, I believe that one's 57.33.
Yeah, 57.33. So we would request that the standard Holiday Inn size signs
Remain.
be allowed, be permitted, but we would go down to 3 signs instead of 4.
See, for me, this, I don't think the size matters as much to me as making sure that we get closer to conformance on the number of signs in that particular topic. You said, I think others have similar variations, so it does,
The sizes are fairly minor, but you can argue that both ways,
Yeah.
right? You can argue that it's a minor request, they're just moving up a little bit, and you can also say, well, it's minor, you need it, so.
Yeah, I mean, in an area like that, because it is, I mean, technically, yeah, it's industrial, but it's it's light industry, it's office buildings, it's a couple restaurants. If it was more closer to other, smaller businesses or something, I think the sign size, or if we're talking about something on Oak Park Avenue, that'd be a little bit different, so when it comes down to the size of the sign. But in this area, I would have no personally, I would have no problem with the
Standard size.
changes to the sign sizes and then limiting to 3 signs versus the 4. Yeah, no south sign. Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
So I guess that's it on that one.
well, on the monument sign,
Yeah,
that one
I-
doesn't bother me as much.
Well,
But you said that the standard is that the base
Yes.
and the sign have to be the same width, correct?
Correct, and that's what we basically require for all our freestanding monument signs, so I get this doesn't look that bad, but I think they're trying to make them a little more substantial, so that way, people can't keep arguing, making that smaller and smaller, and then you have a pull
Yeah.
sign again, so it's trying to avoid pull signs and, try and get a little more substantial
permanent
Not the
type
pedestal look
signs.
kind of thing.
You know, I think it would look better if it was wider anyway. even
That's an
wider
easy
than the
fix
side.
too, though.
That
It's
shouldn't be
easier to
that
just
bad,
widen
yeah,
it out.
I mean, that shouldn't be that.
And it can be wider than the sign, it's just got, at a minimum, gotta be the width of the sign face, so.
And we're okay with that. We'll work with staff to make sure that it meets that
be great.
requirement, and we're definitely okay with that.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Okay. And last but not least is just the pedestrian lighting.
And there's
Yeah.
there's no lighting there now, correct?
Correct, there's nothing
And
around
there-
that pond.
And there's no, I mean, there's not like it's connecting to another lit path anywhere, I mean, it.
Correct,
Yeah.
yeah, it's kind of one of those where we think, it was kind of our thought, well, it'd be
How-
nice to have it lit, but it would just be this one portion of the path.
But how long will it take to have, connectability along that whole, area to make it worth lighting it for people walking around? I mean, I don't think we're anywhere near that
No
yet.
destination.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
especially,
it's maybe something, if you guys are okay with skipping that, we can maybe try and work with the actual POA to see if maybe they can come up with some kind of plan that
I think that'd be a
fits
bit
the
better.
whole-
yeah, for down the line, yeah,
Yeah.
something like
I
that.
mean-
And the condition of that walk, I mean, if it's not in great shape, why are we lighting it for,
Yeah, why are we lining it for one small section that
Yeah.
it's not gonna make, realistically, it's not gonna be worth it, at the cost right now, but, again, right across the street at 183rd, we have a proposed development that's coming that, we should take a look at that sooner rather than later, because if we can make it walkable to where there's a way to, or if they cross underneath or over, or there's shuttles over, or people walking around that area after coming back from that site, yeah, we definitely should take a look at that, but let's do it with the POA first.
I think that's good, and then also if we can ever get sidewalks in there, that'd be really nice too.
Sidewalks,
Because
yes.
that's on 183rd Laxum, that's one of the things that sticks out most when I look over there. I'm like, this is
The-
hotels, businesses.
The entire
An
village
active
there.
area that
Restaurants
was
and-
designed to
yeah,
not
and-
be
yeah.
walkable almost, so, I know our engineers have, sidewalk gap programs that are pretty aggressive, so I know that's on their list, but it's a big area too, so there's a lot of cost out there, but, they've made room for their sidewalk on their properties.
I would
Hopefully we
say
can
they-
get it all
they've-
connected sooner than later.
They've agreed to pay to improve that, at least the sidewalk that's there, but the lighting, I'm not sure if it's gonna be worth their resources at this time.
Okay.
That would be our preference.
So I guess, if you guys are, we can amend, once we get to the motions, we can amend for the site plan motion. We can remove the part that has the wall sign size requirements, and then we can put in that the signs that there be a maximum of 3 wall signs
Okay.
instead of the size requirements.
That'd
So we
be
can
per-
just make that change.
So, I think before we motion to close, are there any other comments from commissioners? Commissioner Manny? Commissioner Vick?
No.
Commissioner Atchison? Mr. Gaskell?
No.
All right, anyone want to make since there are no further motions or discussions, motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Vick, second by Commissioner Atchison. Those agreed, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Staff, please go through the standards for this time. Dan, do you want to go through the standards?
Yeah. So the first one's just that the special use won't be detrimental to or endanger the public health, safety, morals, comfort, or general welfare. It's not planned to do that. The hotel will just provide accommodations to the visitors of the community. The Holiday Inn project will be constructed meeting current village building codes and benefit surrounding businesses and properties. The second one is that the special use will not be injurious to the use or enjoyment of other property in the immediate vicinity. The surrounding property in the immediate vicinity is already primarily developed. The use is a permitted use. Again, the site's currently vacant, and this will provide accommodations for visitors within the community. The site's pretty well landscaped, and it'll be constructed with quality materials similar to the surrounding properties. And again, it's permitted use in the ORI zoning district and in the PUD. The third standard is that the special use will not impede the normal or orderly development of the surrounding uses. Again, both the adjacent properties to this have already been developed. There's existing roads and existing utilities out there, which goes into our next condition for adequate utilities, access roads, drainage, and other necessary utilities. So utilities, access roads, and then the drainage already exists out there. They're on site. Drainage has been accounted for in that existing pond. The fifth one is that adequate measures have been taken to provide ingress and egress out of the site to minimize traffic congestion. So again, this is proposed, the site access proposes 2 curb cuts on North Creek Drive that allow for efficient ingress and egress. There's no cross access established, but the existing development of those adjacent properties kind of limit that. And then the site incorporates walkways on site for space for future public sidewalk to be installed for pedestrian walkability. Basically the sixth one is that it meets all other regulations in the code, so the special use is basically taking care of that. That outside of what's in the special use, all other parts of this will conform with village codes and ordinances. The special use permit's just necessarily to allow a deviation from the PUD and then from the exceptions from the urban design overlay district. And then last but not least is that it contributes directly or indirectly to the economic development of the community as a whole. Holiday Inn project will contribute directly to the economic development of the community, provides jobs, accommodations for visitors, provides additional property and hotel tax revenue that the village doesn't currently have. Visitors benefit from a large selection of our hotel brands in town, and then existing businesses benefit from the visitors that come to the hotel. I think that's it for our standards.
Doing that, we start, want to make a motion for recommendation of the site plan?
And I can just note and you can maybe just note the revision of condition 2.
Yeah,
will be that
yeah,
the
motion
number of
1,
wall
it will be
signs
conditioned upon
reduced.
the plan being revised, going from four signs down to 3 on the building, and then the monument sign will be widened to be the same width as the sign itself.
Correct, we got that as the first condition, so it'll just be the second one that's revised for the number.
All right, I make a motion to grant the petitioner SD Hospitality LLC site plan approval to construct an approximately 63,471 square foot and 4-story tall Holiday Inn hotel development consisting of 108 rooms and various amenities on the property located at 18320 North Creek Drive in the ORI PD zoning district. In accordance with the plan submitted and listed herein and subject to the following conditions, the freestanding sign base shall be revised to be as wide as the sign face. All wall signs shall be revised to comply, well, actually, no, because we're adjusting that one, right?
Yeah, so this one will be that the number of wall signs will
Okay,
be
yeah.
reduced.
So that the number of wall signs be reduced from 4 to 3. Site plan approval is subject to final engineering review and approval. Site plan approval is subject to approval of the substantial deviation with exceptions with the PUD.
Motion by Commissioner Vick, do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Manny. Secretary, do you want to take a roll?
Vic,
Yes.
Aitchison,
Yes.
Gaskell,
Yes.
Fielder,
Yes.
Manny,
Yes.
Motion carries. I get a Somebody make the motion for number 2?
And sorry, this one will have a revised condition too for number 2 for the wall signs.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Vic, take it away.
Yeah, sure, why not, I guess, okay. I make a motion to recommend that the village board grant a special use permit for a substantial deviation from the North Creek Business Park PUD and exceptions from the zoning ordinance, increased front yard setback, allowing for parking in the front yard, number of curb cuts per site, required cross-access to adjacent properties, to the petitioner, SD Hospitality LLC, to permit a Holiday Inn hotel development on the property located at 18320 North Creek Drive in the ORI PD zoning district, in accordance with the plan submitted and listed herein, and adopt findings of fact as proposed by village staff in the staff report, subject to the following conditions. The freestanding sign base shall be revised to be at least as wide as the sign face, and that we reduce the signs from 4 to 3.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Vic. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Aitchison. Secretary, please call the roll.
Manny,
Yes.
Fielder,
Yes.
Gaskell,
Yes.
Aitchison,
Yes.
Vic,
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously, so the special use will go before the village board for approval at their October 1st, 2019 meeting at 7 PM. For the good of the order, staff, is there anything else?
Oh, and since that was unanimous, it'll just go to the one board meeting on October 1st, and they'll vote for it there. So I can follow up with you guys tomorrow on everything. So.
I only had 2 quick items I think that might be of interest, especially since most of you were involved in the South Street or the Boulevard project. We did have our groundbreaking, some of you may have attended. So we had a pre-construction meeting this morning, so that is going to be a reality, and we'll get to see that up and going. They have filed for a foundation permit and think that will take about 6 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks, I think is what we heard this morning. And the Magnuson project, which is out on 191st Street, we're getting close to a foundation permit only issuance on that one as well. And then next week, the planners are off to the American Planning Association Conference, the Illinois State Conference, so we're gonna come back even smarter than we are already. I don't know if any of you had seen that or if we had distributed that, but they do have plan commission training on that. If anyone ever is interested, we certainly can make accommodations for you. Okay?
Appreciate that.
It's annually, usually in September, so there's usually one day they pick to do like plan commission training. So it might be a little too late this year, but if anyone's interested,
next
we
year.
can definitely get you.
We have some local trainings, like in Elgin, I think there's some local training.
If they retain me after this year, if they retain me, sure, I might look into it, so. I think I might still be on probation, I don't know, so. Appreciate that. So, nothing else?
That's it?
Any other comments from the public tonight? Seeing none, do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Aitchison, seconded by Gaskell. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Nothing opposed, motion carries. Thank you, everybody. Have a good evening.